The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Let me step back and tell you that the vast majority of the people that move illegally into the United States are not bad people. They're not criminals, they're not MS-13. But they're also not people that would easily assimilate into the United States. They're overwhelmingly rural people. In the countries they come from, 4th, 5th, 6th grade educations are kind of the norm. They're coming here for a reason, and I sympathize with the reason. But the laws are the laws.
This is the kind of leadership that we have now, okay? This is the kind of sentiment that is being spread across these United States. This is the kind of hate talk that's coming from, generals, that's coming from John Kelly, speaking on behalf of a nation of immigrants, speaking on behalf of a nation that would probably persecuted his relatives, no Irish need apply. I mean, did the Irish, farmers come here from cities, or did they come from rural areas? Is America a country of cities, or is America a country of rural areas and cities? I mean, I don't even understand what the goal of any of this talk is. I don't know what it is they're after. I don't know what the change in America is that people are seeking with this kind of conversation, with this kind of talk. But I must say, to have an Irish man talk about rural people not being able to assimilate because he's deemed it so, and speaking on behalf of the president, and then reading what we're doing to people who are coming here seeking asylum. Do you know that we put them in freezers? Do you know that? Yeah, we're putting women and children in freezers. This is just the most amazing thing. This reminds me of, the stories of the black site prisons. That we love to keep it below temperature. We love to see people freezing. We love to see people sleeping on floors. We love to take their sweaters away. We love to put their children in one place and the parents in another place and separate the entire family. This is unbelievable. I have to say, Human Rights Watch put out, a report about what is really going on with these people who are coming to seek asylum. And that's a legal enterprise. That is something that people are entitled to do, to come here and ask for asylum, make a claim of asylum, saying that they are in danger, saying that they are in impending danger, saying that there is actual, danger, that there is, a real credible fear. It's actually in the law. It's called credible fear, a credible fear claim. Okay? They're fleeing persecution, they're fleeing torture, or they're fleeing violence, and they're allowed to come here and make that claim. And then we have hearings, and we decide whether there is a credible fear, whether there really is persecution, whether there. This is what America is. It is what America is. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. You're teeming wretched from you're wretched from your teeming shores. Yeah, I think that's the sentiment there. Well, looks like the United States immigration authorities are routinely detaining men, women, and children, including infants. Infants. Love the fetus, hate the child. In frigid holding cells for days when they are taken into custody to make these claims of asylums. Human Rights Watch did 110 interviews with children and women who were detained with children, and they detailed what they found. Women and children detained along the border usually spend 1 to 3 nights and sometimes longer in CBP Border Patrol holding cells where they sleep on the floor with only a Mylar blanket, like the foil wrapper that you see marathon runners using. Yeah, like that, to protect themselves from the cold. The border agents require them to remove and discard their sweaters and any other layers of clothing, purportedly for security reasons, before they enter the holding cells. Almost all the women and children that Human Rights Watch spoke to said they were not allowed to shower, sometimes for days. until they were transferred to longer-term detention facilities. Nearly all said they were not allowed to receive hand soap, toothpaste, or toothbrushes in these holding cells. And if they had these toiletries upon them in their personal property, they were not allowed to take them into the holding cells with them. And they were not able to wash their hands before or after eating or using the toilet. Menstrual hygiene products and diapers, they said they did not have access to while in the holding cells. A typical account, 4 nights in a freezer in Arizona in late August. A Carolina R, they don't want to use her last name, she said it was cold. It was really, really cold. They just gave us a piece of aluminum for a blanket. There weren't any mats. We just slept on the floor. The women and children were held in the cell, could not shower during the 4 days she was there, she said. Human Rights Watch then went and interviewed 150 women between 2016 and 17, and they said that they were held in freezing cold facilities. They call them freezers. In Spanish, they call them freezers. And they hold they hold the adult men, the teenage boys and the girls and the mothers and the younger children in separate cells, meaning that the families are separated and before they're placed in these holding cells. They have serious mental issues after this because they've already suffered trauma getting here, because they usually walk here, ride on the top of trains that are full of scrap metal with their children on the top of these trains, and then they walk some more. But they're fleeing because they've been targeted for violence or other persecution, and that's why they're coming here asking for asylum. Now, I got to say that the Border Patrol says itself that these facilities are not designed for overnight stays. A detention expert who examined these cells concluded they were not appropriate for confinement of adults for more than 10 hours, and that the holding cells should never, ever be used to hold children, ever. They say the temperatures in the holding cell should be set at reasonable and comfortable levels, and that access to showers and hygiene materials, including soap, toothbrushes, and menstrual hygiene products, should be provided to those who are held overnight. However, that is not happening. Here's a story. They took us to a room that was cold. They gave us aluminum blankets. There were no mats. We slept on the floor. It was really, really cold. This is a woman who was held with her 13-year-old daughter in a holding cell in Arizona. It was a very cold room. We had winter clothes and still couldn't handle the temperature. We slept directly on the floor. The lights were on the whole time, even in the room. This is a woman who was held with a 7-year-old son in El Paso. A federal court found in 2015, our courts found in 2015 that these holding cells, the conditions there were, quote, deplorable and in violation of a 20-year-old settlement agreement in a case known as Flores versus Reno, governing conditions of immigration detention for children. In June 2017, the same court found that CBP holding cells in the Texas Rio Grande Valley continued to breach the Flores settlement by failing to provide detained children with adequate access to food and clean drinking water, subjecting them to unsanitary conditions, keeping cells extremely cold, and subjecting them to conditions that cause sleep deprivation, among other shortcomings. Nearly all the women and children we interviewed described conditions in CBP holding cells that in many critical respects match those found by the court to be in violation of the settlement agreement. Now, there's two agencies that, one is the Office of Field Operation, and they oversee border stations for ports of entry, legal ports of entry, where people drive their cars. And the other, the Border Patrol, is responsible for the immigration enforcement elsewhere along land borders. So you have Border Patrol that are apprehending undocumented immigrants. And then you've got the Office of Field Operation. They take in those who are requesting asylum at an official border crossing. That the women and children interviewed for this report are put in holding cells whether or not they presented themselves for asylum claims. it didn't matter. They were still being put in these, horrible conditions. Every single one of the women that Human Rights Watch interviewed. I mean, this is just unbelievable to me. What the hell are we doing here? What are we doing? I don't understand. Honestly, I don't understand how low this country can go. I'm not really clear about how low and how much bottom feeding we really have to clean up in this country, because there are people who applaud this, there are people who celebrate this. John Kelly is presenting it. You've got the president who is surrounded by people who are secretly wishing death to an entire to many religions, actually death to entire religions of the world, while going to those countries and taking their money or trying to represent that they're for them or that they're on their. I honestly don't understand if this president wants to be the president of Armageddon. I mean, I really, and they're all saying, oh, this is an historic. He's so historic. He's so that, and it just freaks me out, because to what end? What is the goal? What is the goal? I don't even know. Eric in Atlanta.
Hey, I didn't think you were going to come in fast.
What?
Hey, you know what? I didn't think I was going to get on that fast. Randy, I'm really nervous. I was having a conversation with one of my white friends / coworkers. We came to the conclusion that there's a segment in this society, and I want to say a third, maybe a half of the white population, that is so down with this whole white supremacist movement that we have in charge right now.
Yeah.
That I think that what the ultimate, you were just saying to what end, and I think a lot of people in the media don't want to admit to this reality, but there's a large segment of this population that is kind of Nazi-like in their way of thinking, that this thing is only going to end, this virus that's been unleashed is only going to end with some kind of a violent confrontation between the people who are trying to hold on to their supremacy and everybody else.
I get it, and I've thought about it. So they get their race war. What is it? What's the end? What I mean, how did if
I think if Germany 1933 is
well, that was a completely failed ideology, wasn't it?
But I think it's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to succeed. But as a black man and walking around in my skin and looking and listening to things that are happening, I'm really just nervous about what this is all leading up to. Because I don't think, these people are irredeemable. I guess that's the right word. You can't reason with these people. You can't have logical, rational conversation with
I know.
people. You cannot sway them from their beliefs. And I just think that we're headed for something very, very tragic. I don't see a 2020 election anything like we've ever known. I don't see that on the horizon. I see some really terrible things coming in the next few months based on what happens with this Mueller investigation, based on whether or not Trump resigns. I know he's not ever going to be that's not going to happen. But you've been doing this stuff way longer than I've been listening to it. So am I being overly pessimistic, or should I keep being delusional and thinking that
I would say
it's all just politics? No, it's not all politics.
No, I would say fully 1/3 of this country, or at least 20%, let's say, are devout haters. I mean, their entire life is about, I have to go to work, but then I can get home and I can start hating again. I can get into Reddit and I can get into, 4chan or whatever. I could send these nasty memes. I can, intimidate people. It makes me feel strong and good. There are people, I swear to God, their whole day is predicated on the fact that they could get back home, get in front of their computer screens and start threatening people. So I don't know why they're so full of hate and grievance, but they are, and they're there.
And what Hillary said was absolutely right. They are deplorable. There is a large segment of absolutely deplorable people that, for them, the elimination of blacks, Hispanics, Jews, gays, cripples, whatever you want to call it, I think they would totally be for that. And totally be okay being under a dictatorship. Totally.
Well, they That's a very sick thought, because those people who, think that if you had a dictator, that all of a sudden they're going to be, they're going to be, I don't know, given some privilege under that dictator, are absolutely wrong. I mean, a dictator is the all-knowing, all-seeing, he's going to, they don't stand a chance. They will be just as persecuted as everybody else. They will be
But they don't understand it. They don't see it, and they don't have the intellectual capacity to have that explained to them the way you just explained it.
Well, it's a sad truth. The only thing I can tell you is there are more of us than there are of them. And this is.
I want to hope so.
Yeah, there are, and it's just a sad fact of life that we will always have a group of people in this country who are so angry and so full of grievance and can't figure their way into the 21st century, and they need somebody to blame, and they're blaming everybody that's not them, thinking that Donald Trump is going to favor them, even though Donald Trump cannot stand people without money. He only cares about the billionaires. This is Donald Trump's point of entry. What are you going to do for me?
And it doesn't seem Donald.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
So is this Halloween or something?
Why did you say that?
Why would I? Why wouldn't I?
Why would you say that?
Because I want to.
Why? What's wrong with me?
I don't know. Will you tell me what's wrong with you?
Do you know I'm a Muslim?
Yeah, I do.
What's your problem with that?
No, I don't like it. How's that?
Why?
I don't like that because I don't like your religion and says to kill me and I don't want to be killed by you. How's that?
Are you scared of me? No. Have you read the Quran?
Yes, I've read enough of it to know. Yes, that's right. That's tough.
You've read the Quran?
That's tough. I've read.
Do you know in which context that is?
I've read enough of it to know.
Are you a Christian?
Absolutely.
If you're a Christian, let's talk about your Bible. Do you know that your Bible, in your Bible, Jesus says to bring the people who don't believe.
I don't have
to kill them.
I don't have any kind of a conversation with idiots.
You are committing hate speech. You are committing hate speech against me.
Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. Fuck up. Who is the manager?
I'm a supervisor on duty.
Okay. Tony Alfaro?
Why are you not serving him? Because he is disrupting a public place and being very racist. Thank you. So everyone sees. Thank you.
That's what you want? This is what all this is about, so that you could yell at some poor little woman who wants to get a cup of coffee? That's what it is? This is how you feel strong? This is what makes you feel like a big man, yelling at somebody who practices a different religion? Really? This is so unbelievable to me. We have a president who is obviously a white supremacist, who has a cabinet full of other white supremacists who happen to be extremely rich. And that's all he respects, is extreme wealth. Everyone else can go to hell. So I don't know what you think is going to happen to your free speech in a dictatorship. I don't know what if you're, not exactly, cutting the mold that Donald Trump, prefers. What if you're just a poor guy and you're a blue collar guy and you're a high school graduate, nothing more? You think he's going to have a use for you? Oh, please, you'll be herded off to an LSD concentration camp like that. I'm so serious. There is no place for you in his world. Only the rich will survive. And all these dumbasses out there that think that they're fighting together, in this crazy, white supremacist, white Christianity. Oh, you're insane. You're absolutely insane. This man has a definite preference, and it doesn't include the undereducated, and it doesn't include Joe Lunchbucket, and it doesn't include some guy who gets food stamps, and it doesn't include guys who live in trailers, and it doesn't include women, okay, at all. Holy crap. I'm so, there was let me tell you something. Everything that this man is doing is to change what America is, to change exactly what America is. A place where you're free, a place where right now, you can own a gun. You really think in a dictatorship you're going to get to own a gun? You really think that that's the way it's going to be? Are you insane? Are you crazy? You either have to have justice for all or no one gets it. That's just the way justice works. It's either justice for all, or a handful of oligarchs get it all, and you could scrape by. Wake up. Pay a freaking attention. Look at what's going on. This was on the House floor last week, okay? This is because we have, every time Donald Trump speaks about deregulation, he's talking about keeping lead out of water. That's a regulation, right? We're talking about things like, lending, like banks can't discriminate based on, race, all these things, right? So now you've got this rule that was passed in 2016. Richard Cordray and Elizabeth Warren set up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to protect all Americans from being gouged by banks. And one of the things that they actually passed required, when they car dealers can't charge additional interest on top of the third-party lender's loan. So if I go to buy a car and let's say, I don't know, Chase Bank makes me a loan, then I get the money from Chase and they finance my car. Well, a lot of car dealerships were adding their financing on top of my financing. Why? Because they could. And then the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau started looking at this, and they required different people like Toyota. Toyota had to pay $21.9 million in restitution to thousands of people who paid higher interest rates on their auto loans because they were charging an additional interest rate on top of the third-party loan. Okay? And it just turns out that the people who were being charged this additional interest happened to be minority people who went into these car dealerships. And so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau passed a rule that said that was illegal after they had been caught, and that if they did it again, they would have to, pay more restitution. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau went after multiple auto lenders, and it caught them discriminating. The Justice Department ordered Ally Financial to pay $80 million in damages and $18 million in penalties after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found that 235,000 non-white buyers paid higher interest rates for auto loans between April of 2011 and December of 2013. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Justice Department also penalized Honda and Toyota and Fifth Third Bank for discrimination in automobile lending. Well, when Donald Trump became president and the Republican Congress realized they had a president who was very willing to discriminate against whoever, as long as it meant more money, you had the Republicans in the House asking the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, whether or not the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's auto lending rule could be overturned. And the GAO found that, they didn't file it correctly, and you really only had 60 days to argue with the rule, but they didn't file it correctly, so we'll start the clock now. And that is why there's this big debate in Congress about anti-discriminatory automobile lending practices being brought back.
I will tell you, I am greatly offended as a member of the automobile industry and as someone who has served thousands of people. To sit here today and have to listen that somehow this is discriminatory just adds to the fact that when you're out of facts, when you don't know what you're talking about, and what you've never done, not one of your people have ever been on the floor and
Okay, let me tell you who that is. All right, right there is what's his name? Kelly. What is this guy's name? From Pennsylvania, huh? Mike Kelly. What is it? Mike Kelly. Yeah, Kelly. Mike Kelly. He's a Republican from Pennsylvania. Senator Pat Toomey, also a Republican from Pennsylvania. Senator Pat Toomey brought this rule reversal into the Senate. It passed the Senate like by 51 votes. Okay, it was like 51-47. And now the House is taking it up. And so this Kelly dude who owns a car dealership in Pennsylvania, he's on the floor screaming that these car dealerships who have been caught red-handed, discriminating against non-white automobile buyers by adding another interest rate, okay, to the automobile purchase at the dealer level, that they don't know what they're talking about, Now, I got to tell you that this is the auto lending discrimination guidance that was issued by the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, which used to be headed by Richard Cordray. Richard Cordray is now running for governor in Ohio. However, he was replaced by Mick Mulvaney because they wanted to do away with protections that, people were caught red-handed, doing. And he's on the floor saying he owns an automobile. You've never once spent a day in your life on the floor selling a car. I got news for you. My mother was a car dealer. Okay, my mother, she was a car salesman. My mother worked for a car dealer not her whole life. She worked in a dress shop in Brooklyn for a really long time. And then she trained herself and she went to work she was like one of the first female car salesmen in, Brooklyn and Queens. And so I remember the stories. I know what people do. I know exactly what people do. This is why, for instance, car salesmen are not the most loved people in the world. This is why you now have commercials for things like Carvana, where you could cut out the car salesman because people don't like them, because they're always looking to pull a fast one. They're always got a scheme. They always got an operation going, right? Hey, for pennies a payment, you can get polyglycode. Oh, for pennies a payment, we'll put in a Chapman lock. Oh, for pennies, right? Okay, so always something. It's always something. Well, anyway, they started this thing in the. So I just want you to know, Mr. Mike, Kelly, I know exactly what car dealers do because I grew up in a car dealership. That's where my mother worked. So I want you to hear this.
I am greatly offended as a member of the automobile industry and as someone who has served thousands of people. To sit here today and have to listen that somehow this is discriminatory just adds to the fact that when you're out of facts, when you don't know what you're talking about and what you've never done. Not one of your people have ever been on the floor and had tried, not this floor, I'm talking about the automobile floor. You know an awful lot about laptops, but you know nothing about blacktop. How in the world can you reduce this down to discrimination? We are doing the same thing every day that you are doing. We are trying to make sure that we're making America great every day in every way. And the best way to do that is to stop talking about discrimination and start talking about the nation. We're coming together as a people in spite of what you say.
Mr. Kelly, please do not leave. Because I want you to know that I am more offended as an African-American woman than you will ever be. And this business about making America great again, it is your president that's dividing this country. And don't talk to me about the fact that we don't understand what happens on the automobile. No, I will not yield. No, I will not yell.
Okay.
Don't tell me that we don't understand. That's the attitude that's been given toward women time and time again. Don't you dare talk to me like that and think that somehow women don't understand what goes on the floor of automobile dealers.
Really?
Minded to direct her remarks to the chair. The
And
gentlelady
I
will
am
continue
saying that
in
I
order.
will continue to do that. However, I don't appreciate that you did not interrupt him when he was making those outrageous remarks about him knowing more about discrimination than I know about discrimination.
Seriously.
I resent that, and I resent the remark about making America great again. He's down here making a speech for this dishonorable president of the United States of America. Having said that, I reserve the balance of my time, and no,
yield?
I do not yield not 1 second
what I
to you.
expected. Thank you,
Not
ma'am.
1 second. Not 1 second to you.
God bless her. Congressman Maxine Waters. So here's the thing. Mike Kelly is up there saying that she has no facts, she doesn't understand, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, if you just look into it, even in a cursory way, you will see Ally Financial had to pay $80 million in damages. They had to pay $18 million in penalties after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found that more than 235,000 non-white buyers paid higher interest rates for auto loans between April of 2011 and December of 2013. The Justice Department also penalized Honda, Toyota, Fifth Third Bank over car lending discrimination. Representative Lee Zeldin from New York is responsible for the rollback, for introducing the rollback on the rule that is in place because these people got caught and fined, adjudicated guilty, and paid these astronomical fines and penalties because they were found to be discriminating. And so you've got 64 organizations now, the Consumer Federation of America, the NAACP, the United Steelworkers, all signing on to a letter saying we don't want to go back to discrimination in lending. We're really not interested in setting that dangerous precedent again and sending a message to the public that Congress is more interested in giving handouts to automobile dealers and banks than they are helping American workers and families buy a stinking car. And the way they got caught is the same way Donald Trump got caught not renting to blacks. The National Fair Housing Alliance, they sent all these shoppers out to 8 different dealerships in Eastern Virginia, and they found white borrowers with weaker and worse credit profiles got less expensive financing options and more favorable treatment than their non-white counterparts who were more financially qualified than they were. And they sit there and go, you don't know what you're talking about. They got caught.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Okay, here's what happens if you nap while black.
You got your ID on you?
Yeah, I do.
All right, can we see that?
Why?
We got a police call for you.
And we need to make sure that you belong here.
Okay, let me open my apartment for you so that you can see that I belong here. I don't think there's a need for you to be here. I think you probably need to commit her to an institution. That's the only use you have for being here.
Once we verify that you're a resident here, then we'll be on our way.
Okay, great.
So are you a Yale student?
Of course I'm a Yale student. How else would I get in here?
You're a Yale student. I'm just asking.
Okay, well, you have 3 other cops here.
Well, this is protocol. And I'm the supervisor, so it's going to be okay.
I know it's going to be okay. I know I'm not in trouble. My ancestors built this university. I know I'm not in trouble.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay,
I do know this,
well,
that we
I'm not
have
going to be
all these-
harassed because
This isn't harassment, man.
that's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it is. And so, of course, Sarah Brash was a white Yale student. She called the police on this Yale student who was studying and fell asleep because the white Yale student felt. I thought that liberals were the touchy-feely ones. It's so interesting that we end up being the fact-based ones. And the touchy-feely ones are the ones that are scared of everybody to the point they're calling the police because there's a napping person. And they just feel that this napping person doesn't belong. This napping person should be removed. This napping person doesn't belong there. This is so unbelievable.
I just wonder, Randy, what the police demeanor would be if it was
simply reversed? If a black student saw a white student sleeping, called the cops, I'm just curious
It would be
what their
curious.
demeanor would be.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then you have Howard's old alma mater, American University. You have the very first female black student president. Her name's Taylor. She became the first female African-American president of American University student government. And there was a racist backlash. She literally was terrified for her safety. She filed a lawsuit this week in federal court. There were stunts that were being, done in emails and harassing messages and trolling on her Facebook page. And, people thinking they have a right to traumatize and terrorize or to just hurl hate speech at you. They think that this is somehow covered. Inducing trauma is covered under their free speech rights. So she filed in federal court because they kept doing these stunts involving bananas all over American University. You may have heard about it. So she just filed her lawsuit. They were hanging bananas and they would write on them Harambe bait. You remember the Cincinnati Zoo gorilla Harambe, who was killed in 2016 because Harambe dragged a child through the enclosure. Another one said AKA free, which was a shot at the sorority, the African-American sorority, of which Taylor Dumpson is a member. Bananas insinuating that African Americans are gorillas or monkeys. She said it was jarring, to say the least. So she started getting messages from strangers on Facebook who were harassing her and mocking her and trolling her. This is according to her lawsuit. This was after, a white supremacist posted an article on his site with a picture of her and links to her social media account. He started mocking her, saying, I guess no one feels safe around bananas. Some racists have taken to calling this African queen Dumpy Dumpson SMDH, shaking my damn head. And he continued, be sure to send her some words of support on Facebook and hit up the AU student government on Twitter and let her know that you fully support her struggle against bananas. So she's now suing, she's suing because this man that did this, he is a leading white supremacist. He's a neo-Nazi, and he knew that the language he was using, would encourage his followers to take unlawful acts against Ms. Dumpson, which was his goal. That's why he started, using her name and likeness and harassing her, and so he's going to now most likely have to pay her damages for her pain and suffering, along with punitive damages. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, they filed this for her, and they accused this man of incitement, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Yeah, that's not free speech. I got news for you people. That's not. So her lawyers said that, these kinds of messages, these repeated, endless, constant messaging, like 40, 50 messages in an hour after you've politely said, stop. Yeah, it constitutes harassment. And, it actually is, actionable. So... And then it escalated. She's now suing two other people for tweeting racist stereotypes at her. There was, nooses that were put around the campus. And then there were tweets about get the troops ready, telling people to bring bananas. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why people are just, so agitated, in this particular time and place. But here's a woman who just could not stomach people having a barbecue in the park in Oakland, California this weekend.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday at the lake?
Yes.
I just looked at the map and it said this map is fine to barbecue.
No, it's not.
I park.
She said this was her park?
Yeah, I
So how did she talk to you guys? Was it a difference?
Well, I was out here by myself, and she came up here. I'm like, look, man, I'm minding my own business. I was like, I've been here 42-something years. I know where I can and cannot barbecue at. You know what I'm saying? She was like, it's against the law. I'm going to go home and call the police. I'm like, you know what? Do what you want to do. Fire department rolled by here about 2 or 3 times, looked at me, waved, and kept going.
I hear you have a problem with these gentlemen having a barbecue here at the lake. What's going on?
That's you don't want.
It's illegal to have a charcoal grill in the park here.
No, it's not actually. I just looked at the map. It says this is a designated barbecue area.
No, not for a charcoal grill. No charcoal grills are allowed.
Are you sure it's not because you don't want black people being out here?
It has nothing to do with their race.
Yes. She's the fucking coal Nazi police. She's like a fucking coal fascist. You're gonna have to respect my authority.
And the entire time, despite her being super aggressive with him, everything.
So her attitude was totally different before I got here.
It was really aggressive towards him.
Wow.
Really.
So you gave me the white lady attitude. Thank you. That's why I came out here to show a difference. Everybody knows this man. I know this man right here. He's respected in this community.
I am a white person with brown hair, a navy blue sweatshirt, and jeans.
It's a white lady scared. Code 1. White lady scared. Code 1. You better come quick.
I'm being harassed.
Okay. Can you back off?
I would like her to give me the card that she stole from me.
Can you back off?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm at the quick stop.
Oi. That's what happens when you barbecue while black. Let's see. This is what happens when you Airbnb while black and carrying luggage into your rental.
I don't know how to react to that. She said we look strange, and I don't know what about us was strange. If I was in my neighborhood and I saw someone coming out of a house with luggage, I would not automatically suspect that they were stealing.
So once the sergeant came, the mood and the energy changed completely. He didn't believe anything we were saying. He didn't believe the Airbnb app that we'd shown. He didn't believe the landlord that we had called and the picture we were shown. They called the landlord and got a DMV picture, and they showed it to us, and we all agreed, yeah, that's her. And the sergeant said, but of course they would say that. And so at that point, it just felt like everything was against us.
Don't Airbnb while you're black. Don't do that, everybody. Just don't. No, do not move freely about this country. No, don't do that. So you can't nap, can't be student body president, can't Airbnb, can't barbecue at the lake. You can't hold people accountable for discriminating in bank lending, because then you will be called ignorant on the floor and that you know nothing about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or all of these fines and penalties that will levied against various banks and car dealerships for discriminating against people for buying a car while black. Can't do that either. Sean Hannity is, doing all these rentals now. He's got all these rentals in, places like Perry, Georgia and stuff like this. And, if you're even a minute late on your rent now, he evicts you. In fact, Sean Hannity has been evicting people at a greater rate than the entire state of Georgia.
While on maternity leave from her job at a glass factory, Flu Ellen struggled to come up with her $750 rent, even by the 20th of the month, when residents knew they could be evicted.
Everyone has experienced situations where they get behind, where I reached out to the property manager, explaining my situation, and that I would be, of course, a little late, but they wasn't as understanding. Came home one day and I saw an eviction letter on my door, so I was shocked.
Flu Ellen paid over $300 in fees to stay, never knowing much about the owner of the sprawling apartment complex about 100 miles south of Atlanta. But documents show the complex's owner is one of America's most famous television personalities.
Really?
Conservative talk show host Sean Hannity.
We now have in this country what is a runaway investigation. It's spinning out of control. It's led by Mueller and his merry band of Trump-hating deep state sycophants. That's just a fact.
His real estate empire came to light after President Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, identified Hannity as a client.
A client.
The Fox News host says he never paid Cohen for real estate advice and has defended his holdings, saying he is investing in underserved areas. In a statement, Hannity said he isn't involved in managing the properties and that tenants are only evicted after breaking their lease, which under Georgia law, he noted, includes failing to pay rent on time. But according to records reviewed by the Washington Post, the company managing Hannity's largest Georgia properties filed for eviction more than 230 times in 2017, more than double the rate of landlords statewide. For tenants like Fluellen, the aggressive tactics at Hannity's properties can have lasting consequences. After months of barely avoiding eviction, Fluellen went to the property manager's office and told them she was moving out in 30 days. But there was a catch. She was responsible for the $1,000 cleanup cost of a bedbug infestation discovered months earlier.
With my middle child, she used to wake me up sometimes and be like, she felt like something was crawling on her, and she said she was itchy. And I got someone to look into it and tell me what it was. I end up experiencing a bed bug situation from living there.
The rental company would not accept a check for her final month's rent unless she also paid the balance due for the cleaning, a practice landlords can use in Georgia to speed to an eviction hearing. Fluellen moved out, but with 2 evictions on her record.
I tried to get an apartment right after I moved from Hampton Place. I had to get my mom to sign a lease for me just so I can have somewhere to stay. I can't go nowhere. Like if I try to get another apartment or another house to live in, you know, that's the first thing they want to check for.
These are really, really some lovely people that we got in this country who are famous and rich. And they will be the only ones that survive this dictatorship thing because everybody else can go to hell, as you know. Now, Sean Hannity calls Donald Trump every single night like a girlfriend. I mean, like 2 girls in junior high school. Every night after 10 o'clock when Trump is upstairs alone in bed. Sean Hannity is a virtual first lady. That's what Sean Hannity is. He spends more time in bed with Donald Trump than anybody else. This man is evicting people and then claiming on his show that he's investing in poor, downtrodden areas. Meanwhile, the HUD loans are government-backed.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
This incident actually happened around 4:30 this afternoon right here behind me in the Mayfair Mall parking lot. Wauwatosa police say they got a call for a report of disorderly conduct. The video starts with the punch.
Why are you punching like that?
Watch again as the officer scuffled with the suspect. A mall security guard is also involved. That's when the officer unleashed a punch right to the face. The suspect then dropped to the ground. Both the officer and the security guard tried to put the suspect's hands behind his back. He is yelling for his friend to call his mother, and that's when the officer hit him again in the back and then again in the face. Tyrone Jackson filmed the incident and says as soon as he saw the officer approach the suspect, he knew he should start recording.
Honestly, I wanted to help. But then I didn't want to get myself in no trouble as well. You know, right is right, wrong is wrong, wrong is wrong. And I feel like it could have used better little force other than that, punch him in the face. Always obey authority, that's my opinion. But when he's young and he feel like he ain't did nothing wrong, so he felt like I didn't have to talk to you. And he had that right. And the officer felt different. And you know, yes, he was resisting, but a punch to the face to a young man is totally different.
So Tim, what are police saying about this?
Joyce, police told us earlier that what you saw in that video right there is only a small fraction of what happened between that suspect and the police officer. That suspect, by the way, was arrested. He is 17 years old. He is charged with battery, resisting an officer, and disorderly conduct.
Can't we all just get along? Can't we all just get along? Yeah, no matter what you see on the video, it's only a small fraction of what happened. Why, he needed to have the crap kicked out of him. It's unbelievable. And here's another one. This is a story about a guy who was jailed for his Facebook posts. A guy named Rakim Balugan, should tell you everything right there, thought he was dreaming. Armed agents in tactical gear stormed his apartment. He was startled awake by a large crash and screaming officers commanding him. And he soon realized that the nightmare was real. And he and his 15-year-old son were forced outside of their home in Dallas in their underwear. He was handcuffed. He was shaking in the cold wind. He thought maybe it's a misunderstanding that led the FBI to his door on the 12th of December. He's a father of 3. He said he was shocked to learn that agents were investigating domestic terrorism. He said he's a Black Lives Matters activist. He has never done anything violent in his entire life. They refused him bail and kept him behind bars for 5 months. Yeah, 5 months. And the U.S. attorneys couldn't prosecute him because they had nothing. They had nothing. But because he was incarcerated as a father of 3 for 5 months without bail, he lost his house. He lost his car. He's been labeled a black identity extremist. The counterterrorism assessment of him provided nothing, no evidence of any threats against anyone, including the police. He's a full-time IT guy. That's what he does for a living. He's your IT guy. Yeah. Just saying. Listen, I just want you to understand that if you're not very, 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 very wealthy, you're not going to be one of Trump's oligarchs, okay? You're not going to be included in this rarefied air up there. Donald Trump loves to use angry white men as props, but that is the only place in his life for you, is as props. You attend his rallies, you hold signs, you cheer and scream for torture and other various, things like waterboarding and invasions of, unarmed nations. And then once the oligarchy is in full throttle, you're cut out of the whole thing. You just go and suffer and die. Janet in New Jersey.
Yes. Hi, Randy. Listen to your program all the time. Absolutely love it. The state of our country is severely, severely bad. We're being ruled by a dictator. We did survive the Civil War. What do you think? Do you think that we can survive his 4 years of ripping apart all of our laws that help all of us live a better life?
No, I think we can survive. I just don't. I think it's going to be painful. I think it's already inflicted pain on many, many people who deserve no pain. Life is hard enough to have a government that's betting against people over and over and over again just to line their own pockets, to self-enrich. I mean, it was bad when there was when we started to understand how much money was in politics and that both sides were just as guilty. But now it's ramped up exponentially to this new level of oligarchy. And no, it's not going to be comfortable. And no, it isn't going to be easy. And no, I wish I could tell you that, it'll all just go away. It will not go away. These guys are burrowing into the justice system. These guys are being nominated and confirmed as judges, even if they, write blogs for the Ku Klux Klan, especially if they do. I mean, you got these guys who, we always had this procedure in Senate confirmations of judges that the home state senators, so let's say you were a judge and you came from, I don't know, Wisconsin. So Tammy Baldwin, the Wisconsin senators would put in a blue slip saying that they may disagree with you, but they think that you're suitable for the bench. Well, we now have these justices that can't even get blue slips from their home state senators. And Mitch McConnell is plowing past the blue slip rule and just asking for confirmation hearings and floor votes, in spite of the fact that the people who know them the best, the local senators, are saying these people are Klansmen, or these people haven't ever tried a case in their lives. This man didn't even ever conduct a deposition on his own, not once ever. They don't have good ratings from the Bar Association. They've been ruled to be unacceptable by their own association, and still they're just packing them onto the courts and onto the courts. No, it's not going to be easy. No, it's not going to be painless. Yes, gas prices are going up because this man wants war. What he did today, let me tell you something. The Middle East it's always been a powder keg. It's just waiting for somebody to spark it. He sparked it today. Gas prices are already over $3 a gallon in 10 states. What, do you think this is going to be easy? Prepare yourselves, people. This is hard work. Andre in Silver Springs.
Hey, how you doing, Randy?
Hey.
Hey, I just wanted to make a comment in regards to the recent, white women calling police.
What is that? That's new.
Well, it's very, very alarming because, as a black man, I viewed white women as kind of an ally and a bridge to the white male supremacy and white male power, et cetera, because white women are oppressed and they're also fighting to get equality, be recognized as equals. So seeing that, the Yale situation, the situation at the cookout or the barbecue out in Oakland, and the situation at Airbnb, it's alarming because if white women start to display this irrational fear, people of color, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble, in our pursuit to try to get, equality and whatnot. So it's scaring me a little bit, because it's kind of also making me think of, the Emmett Till situation. We're not there yet, but it could very easily slide into that when we talk about this irrational fear in regards to, white women, particularly black men, So kind of want to make a comment on it. So.
Well, all I can say is it's not all white women. That's for sure.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. I hope these are isolated incidents. I really hope that, I think most of the oppressed groups, particularly in America,
Here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing, and this is how simple it really is. If you're a white woman and you see a black woman sleeping or taking a nap on your campus in a common room, in a common area, why don't you, if you're so fearful of her presence, why don't you ask her, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I think
and she'll tell you, oh, I'm sorry, I fell asleep. I was studying. I got a big test tomorrow. I live right down the hall. Nice to meet you. Sorry we've not met before.
I mean, even
what is the thing with picking up the phone now? What is the thing where you got to call the cops and make a police report because somebody is sleeping?
Yeah, it's insane. The Yale situation is ridiculous. I went to college and many of us fell asleep in our common rooms in our dorms. It happens during finals times. You're studying. I mean, it happens.
I just don't understand why people are not speaking to each other anymore. I don't know what ratcheted it up to the level where you don't even speak to somebody who's in Yale, in Yale, okay, where obviously you have to have a card to get into the dorm, and then you have to have a card to get into the common area, and then you have books there, and obviously your books are there, your laptop is there, and you're sleeping on a sofa there. So what has happened that the first inclination about what to do is call the cops instead of just saying, hey, hey, are you okay? I see you, you sleeping. Are you okay? Oh, hi, I live down the hall. I saw you sleeping. I just wondered if you were okay. We've never met before. I haven't seen you in the hallway. My name is Sandra Bash or whatever. What happened to that?
It seems like something that's very simple, but, Sandra Bash and those few other incidents, the women in a few other incidents, don't seem to understand, how simple it is to just go, maybe introduce yourself, or at the very least ask if you're okay. Start some sort of dialogue before you just go to call the police, because
could we please all, as Randi Rhodes listeners, just signal to each other by smiling at each other? Could we just do that simple little thing, please? I mean, I make it a practice all the time because, I moved into a Haitian neighborhood. I'm the odd man out, okay? And they have gone out of their way to let me know I'm welcome, and not one single person passes by me without smiling to let me know that I'm welcome in their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And it works. It makes me feel good, and I smile at everybody now, especially if I'm in a place or they're in a place where maybe I'm the majority.
Yeah, I agree with you, Randi. I agree.
Just smile. Just smile. What is so freaking hard about that? Ask somebody, are you okay if they're passed out on a sofa? What is wrong with that?
Randi, when you watch these videos back to back like you showed them, what also seems dangerous to me is that these women, in their fear, saw the police as an extension of their authority. Like, I'm not going to ask the question. I'm not going to smile. Just call the cops. This is my response. This is what I can do.
You cannot call the police because you feel uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable around different types of people, you're the person who needs to call for help for yourself. The other person is not what needs to be tended to. You do. You need help. You need to be tended to. Something has gone horribly wrong. Rhonda in Erie. Oh, hi, Rhonda.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, I'm, stressed out.
It's very stressful. I have to say, this whole march to Gomorrah is freaking me out.
Well, it's we've been here before. And
only a little bit. Only a little bit. People want to say, well, all this happened when Obama was president. And that's because you had Trump and people like him doing birther, stuff. And you had people who were protesting against their own ability to buy health care by holding signs of Barack Obama with a bone through his nose. That is when it started. Now it's been ramped up by a commander-in-chief who has surrounded himself with other white supremacists. And the only reason why they're all about the white supremacy is because they know that's a way to get rich.
Well, it actually did start much earlier than that. These are the same behaviors that my parents dealt with.
Right.
This is not new. We haven't seen it in our lifetime.
Well, it got to a period. It got to this point in time where it was indecent to say certain words, where it became unacceptable, where if you said those words, then there was something wrong with you. There was something indecent about you, something shameful about you. And now the whole thing has become there's something shameful about people who don't allow those words to be said around them, who realize that's the entry point for Gomorrah.
Right, and what you're talking about is a cultural shift. That is exactly what happened. But what has happened now is that we've had a cultural shift back the other way.
Yes.
So people feel emboldened to say it. But let me tell you what's happening in the black and probably brown communities too, is that we're withdrawing. We are withdrawing because of this, because it's traumatic enough to have to see this over and over and over again. And one of the reasons I haven't called you much lately is because I have been withdrawing, because seeing this stuff every single day, the videos, hearing the stories, reading the stories, etc., is traumatizing. It literally has a negative effect on people's mental and physical health.
Yeah.
And so you have to, in order to protect yourself from it, because the reality is that it could very well happen to you. We are prepping to send this early teen to college in the fall. I'm worried to death.
Yeah.
You know, it should be a time when I'm not worried about what happens to her. And I'm very excited that she's getting this opportunity. But I also know she's going to a predominantly white institution, and there's shit she's going to have to deal with, and that other people's children will not have to deal with, right? So what's happening is that we're withdrawing. And so not only are we withdrawing because of that, but we are also withdrawing because the institutions that are supposed to be there to help and protect us are also withdrawing. So I was talking about what happened with Doug Jones. So black women elected Doug Jones.
Right.
And what does he do when he gets to the Senate? Almost immediately, he turns around talking about helping to pass legislation which is going to negatively affect the people, directly negatively affect the people who are going to, who elected him. And so, you know, we're looking at some of the things that are going on with the Democratic Party, and we need to go away from identity politics when what we're really doing is issuing the identity politics of underrepresented groups, and we're going to focus on the identity politics of white men. Still, identity politics is just not the kind that they want to address. So we are withdrawing, and this is dangerous. It is good for us to self-protect in terms of our mental and physical health, but we are withdrawing from the political systems that we need to be engaged in, because the people who are sitting in those seats of power, who are there, who are supposed to help us, are signaling to us that they are not going to do it. This is dangerous.
I know. I feel it too. I know that you wouldn't think that I do, but I do.
Yeah, it's, you know, we have to fight hard against it, and I hope that the right people are listening to your show.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, to think this is going to be easy, or to think that this is going to be painless, or to think that this is going to be, you know, all you need to do is just show up one day in November, that'll be helpful, but it's not going to ease the pain of all this trauma.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma here. There really is. There's some real hate out there, and and it makes you feel dark, and it makes you feel trauma. It does. It makes you feel like you want to withdraw. I get it. I totally hear you. I get it. I will share something with you later. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks. No, I get it. I get it. And you would think that maybe I'm immune to it, or I'm thicker skinned, or my skin is white, or whatever. Oh no, I get it.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, Joan in Los Angeles.
Hey, Randi.
Hi, Joan.
Just listening to you talking with Rhonda, it brought to mind that we were talking to our rector of St. Thomas the Apostle in Hollywood this weekend, and he was saying that the church attendance has dropped dramatically among the Hispanic community. Even though we have sanctuary cities and we have sanctuary churches and all of that, the fear is there and it's real.
I know.
And people won't even go into worship. Because there have been instances apparently where ICE has been waiting outside a church service, if you can believe it.
That's so sick.
It's really pathetic. It's sad.
It's very sad. Everything that's happening here is just it's mind-bendingly, heartbreakingly sad.
So how do we survive this? We have to keep breathing. I
There's
guess.
only
Marching.
one thing that I know how to do, and that's vote. And other than that, just to stay strong and keep us talking to each other, so that nothing goes by the wayside, and everybody has a place where they can connect, and everybody has a place where they know that there still is decency and there's respect for humans. That people are people, and that each and every person has more in common than they do not. It's all I can think of is to stay as thick as thieves right now, to stay together.
Yeah, and there was something I saw.
I was actually thinking yesterday about churches, and I was hoping that, I thought maybe I would ask people today to tell me if they heard anything good in church, on Sunday, if there was any discussion about any of this.
Oh. Well, Bishop Taylor, we have a new bishop out here for the Episcopal Diocese, and he's very strong and very forward in all of this, and he's he's an old Nixon guy. So, but you know, he's like an old-fashioned Republican. Although we truly don't get into the whole politics thing. It's about human rights. But you know, that's the background of a guy like this, and he's over it. You know, he's just disgusted.
Yeah, it is disgusting.
But we don't preach from the pulpit, unlike this Hagee guy who's supposedly, you know.
Okay, I got to tell you that this whole little dog and pony show over there today really freaked me out. Yeah. To bring over these people who literally hate Jews to Israel.
He verbalized it.
Oh my God! It totally blew my mind that, you know, first of all, we're doing this by ourselves. We have no allies left in the world. Donald Trump is playing some really weird game about rearranging our alliances in this world to pull us away from the Europeans, to marry us to the Qataris, to marry us to the Russians, to marry us to the Saudis.
Yeah, well, Fredo does his own thing. He wants something for himself, right?
Always,
on
yes.
his own.
'Cause he's smart. He's smart. Yeah, I know. It's just mind-blowing. I mean, the way that this man has the power to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic, you know, I mean, he does have that power. He is the commander-in-chief. He can do this foreign policy crap. You know, what's really weird is that today he's literally, you know, he put sanctions on this Chinese phone maker who violated sanctions and sold all their stuff to the Iranians. And to, you know, people that were under sanctions, right? And they've been cyber threats to the United States. And then all of a sudden they complained. And now all of a sudden he's trying to, you know, get them to, get American parts back to them so that they can continue to be cyber threats to, I mean, just kissing the asses of these. And all why? Because he needs their cooperation in the North Korea deal, which is completely bogus in this way. You know, that mountaintop nuclear test site collapsed. Okay, that whole mountaintop collapsed because they were doing so much nuclear testing that they literally had a vertical collapse of that test site. And now they're afraid that there's radiation leaking out of that test site. And so they want to implode it and shut it down and bury it. And they're telling us, Trump is telling us that this is some sort of a concession that Kim Jong-un is making.
Oh, they love him. They love Trump.
But the test site is no longer able to operate. Right. And he's serving this up to people as being somehow Nobel Prize winning negotiation. The freaking site collapsed in September. Yeah. And most Americans have no earthly idea that that's the case.
Well, as my father would say, would have said, it's the end of the country. You know, if we don't,
I don't know.
Get out of our comfortable space and take our country back.
Well, yeah, we should co-opt the Take Our Country Back because our country has been given away to various oligarchs, to various Qatari businessmen who, you know, by the way, the Qatari investors are now accused of bribing the president of the United States and his cadre of associates by Michael Avenatti, who has documentation, and also by another group of people that you would never suspect. But Ice Cube, the rapper, Ice Cube, the actor, he's got a business partner who swore out a declaration under oath, that said that the Qataris were trying to buy access to Donald Trump through a basketball league they were trying to start. I mean, it's just, these are amazing stories. Stormy Daniels is literally going to be responsible for exposing this president to the most outrageous, bribes, scandals, fraud, taking money to change our policy, our foreign policy. It's unbelievable what's going on. And Ice Cube, believe it or not, Ice Cube and his partner in this basketball league, they are going to be the saviors of these United States of America. I swear to God. Chris in Rochester.
Hey, smile though your heart is aching.
Okay.
How are you?
Good.
what I wanted to bring up, the other part that's going on with the auto market is basically the third party of the auto market, and that's used cars. And what we have in Rochester, and is going on all over the country, is the financing, basically floor plans for these used car dealers, which pop up all over the place, where they charge the owner a 10% vig, and then they put kill devices in the cars that they lend back out. And the normal expectation is that these cars will come back 3 or 4 times. And that's how they get them. They buy them at auction, they flip them, do minor repairs, and just keep churning it. And that's a big problem in the market, especially in the Rochester area.
And that's what Sean Hannity is doing with housing.
Yeah.
It's the same damn thing. It's the same. You move into one of his apartments, it's full of bed bugs, and then he charges you the cleaning fee after he evicts you because you were 20 days late. 20 days late.
In Rochester, we had 8,688 petitions for eviction and 514 petitions for foreclosure. And people think there isn't a problem.
I mean, really, how in the world do working class people survive the Donald Trump experience? I want to know. I mean, everything he ever said he was going to do, he's reneged on every promise. There's no repeal and replace Obamacare. Where's your health care? Where's your tax cut? Where is anything? Where's the infrastructure plan? Where's the building that was supposed to? We're going to be rebuilding America first. What is he? Now he's talking about bringing back torture. He's got Dick Cheney on the TV advocating for torture. He's got the Middle East is like he's going to set it on freaking fire and pair us up with the Saudis. Holy crap.
But don't forget, you're doing something. You are making a difference in our life. By what you do every day, the 5 days a week, when you get on the air for 2 hours and you bring the common sense, you bring your intelligence, you bring your worldview, that changes outcomes.
Well,
it changes people's behavior.
I would love to say that, I feel that, but I don't. I really don't. I don't feel that anymore. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir almost all the time. I feel like when you invite people with different worldviews in, they are so nasty now and so they're nuclearized. You know what I mean? They're
weaponized.
They're weaponizing, this fake news. They literally believe what they believe, and no amount of facts are going to persuade them. I mean, it's sad, but the truth is that their life experience is going to have to suck again, like when everybody lost their house in order to reject all of this, and then they'll repeat it in 8 years.
Do you remember we talked a couple weeks ago when the IRS went down? I wanted to let you know this. Out of 225 returns that are prepared this year, 25 had to go on an installment plan. That is the highest number I've ever seen since 2007.
Really, enjoy your tax cut, everybody. You didn't get one, okay? He gave away the entire Treasury. He gave $1.3 trillion to the wealthiest corporations and people in the world. In the world. He's now kissing, Chinese phone makers' butts. Okay, he's agreeing to meet a guy who is going to implode a mountain that needs to be imploded because it's no longer functional and it's leaking radiation because he caused these massive earthquakes with 100 kiloton bombs. I mean, this is insane. And you got these props of people that he uses screaming Nobel, Nobel, no for. And they don't even understand that the thing that Kim Jong-un is destroying is a mountain that Kim Jong-un already destroyed.
And not freeing his own prisoners. There's like 517.
He took
South
these
Korean
guys prisoners while Trump was president and then used them as pawns in his game. And then Trump declares victory at 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, what is that? And we have Iranian prisoners that he never talks about. It's just bizarre. This whole foreign policy has... This whole entire feeling that he has, this feeling of dread that Rhonda is explaining, I think the word is dread, where she's describing that everybody's withdrawing because it's too painful, it's too traumatic, it's too ugly, it's too horrible. It's dread. It's dread. I'll tell you what I dread. I dread having to go through it, and I dread the hard work it's going to take to pull us out from the other side. But it's something that I've done before. I'll do it again. But I dread it. I dread it. And how much more pain can this country have inflicted on it? I mean, 2008, everybody lost, pretty much lost their house or the value of their house, or had their 401k, their life savings halved, or they were left with 40% of what they thought they had. Jesus Christ, they're throwing old people out of nursing homes. We're putting people seeking asylum in freezers and separating women and children while the mothers are screaming. This is Sophie's Choice territory. This is really, you think that this is going to be easy? This isn't going to be easy. I'm so sorry. All right, I do have great listeners, though. Mr. Mark, has donated 3 podcasts today for you. So the first 3 callers at 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844. First 3, we will gift you a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
You got the guy right here. This dude stands for the extermination of the white race. I've already told you that, dude.
Jeffrey, every week we find something to agree on, Jeffrey.
Every week.
It's your turn to pick a topic.
Every week, okay.
It's your turn to pick a topic.
Is America great? How about that?
But Jeff, they're going to keep coming.
They're not. There's less of them. There are less. There are people that are not here, and there are more of my side. So that's all that matters. When I first came out here, there were 2 dudes on that side.
8 or 10.
That's awesome. Right. Well, that's a 400% increase. Okay. They're staying stagnant. Okay.
So just so I'm clear, by confronting folks, and you do kind of get in their faces when you want to talk to them with your camera, which makes people uncomfortable.
Okay.
You feel that's actually having a damping effect on their effort, right? So fewer of them are coming out. So you feel like your tactics are working.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
I feel like my leftist tactics are slightly working because that's what they do to us. They'll show up at our jobs. They'll show up at our fucking place and they'll protest. They'll try to get us fired. They'll do all this shit that they claim we're doing. Like when they had the meeting after that thing up in Auburn. We need to worry about the left doxing us. The left is the one doxing us. They're the ones making lists of people that support the NRA and calling them and threatening to take their money away from them. Right. That shit is wrong.
So if you feel this strategy is working for you, I can rationalize that. I'm sorry?
Bro, I'm still down to have a beer with you and sit quietly today.
They've been here for over a year. I don't see...
Oh my God.
But how long has there been opposition here? 2 months. Okay. That's all I'm saying. If I would have known they were out here wasting their lives, having retirement parties for Tom McClintock, I would have been here last year. Did you see the shit they had going on out here, dude? They had full-blown, blown up inflatable shit, tables, all sorts of stuff going on. This is not their area. This is Placer County. This is Roseville. This isn't San Francisco. This is Placer County. It's Roseville.
So there's a lot of that going on. There are a lot of people who are getting right up in people's faces now, and they think that they have the right to harass people. They think they have the right to, call people names, to get up in people's faces, to scream at them, to accuse them of doing illegal things. I mean, and all in the name of saving the white race. It is a very sick situation. We have lists in the homework section today of all the things you cannot do in this country while black. Some of them are like breathing, Some of them are being lawfully armed. Some of them are being unarmed. Some of them are laying down. Some of them are standing up. Some of them are, putting your hands up because that's a sudden movement. Some of them are not putting your hands up because they told you to put your hands up and now you're resisting arrest. So it's gotten to a point where it's so prevalent now. It's everywhere now. It's sad now. And I've heard from too many of our listeners who are saying, you know what, Randy, it's so depressing that we're withdrawing. We're literally withdrawing. We don't know where we're safe. We don't know how to function. It's just too much. It's traumatic. It's like we all have post-traumatic stress disorder. And so immediately I thought, the best person to talk to about this is somebody who's an activist in this area, somebody who's an educator in this area, somebody who writes books about this area, somebody who understands race, and that it's really just a construct. There really is no such thing. But so I invited Tim Wise, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad.
Hey. How are you?
Oh, man. So I'm just going to be honest with you. There are so many nasty folks out there. I mean, just really heinous people who harass me and other people because they think that somehow they're losing their white privilege, and they don't even understand that they ever had it.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of the ultimate irony. They spend all these years denying that it's even a thing.
Right.
And the minute that their position begins to feel, not even threatened, just challenged by pluralism, just challenged by any level of diversity or the mere presence of people of color in their neighborhood, at their Starbucks, in their dorm, Yale, at the park in Oakland, which used to be a black city, all of a sudden these white folks wrapped up not only in our privilege, but our fragility. We are the most fragile snowflakes on the planet. Apparently have the need to call police, engage in this, just over-the-top, hateful, bigoted behavior that we've seen time after time. And, let's be real clear. This isn't new, and I think the big mistake is to think that it is. It's certainly true that some of these folks have been emboldened by the current political moment, but, white folks calling police on black people, for instance, was going on a long time before the more recent incidents. I talked about this yesterday, actually, on my podcast. There was a 6-year-old girl in a Georgia elementary school classroom who had the cops called on her a few years back in 2012 for having a temper tantrum in class. A black teenager who was trying to buy a belt at Barney's, but because it was an expensive belt, the assumption was he must have stolen the money that he used to buy it, so they called the cops on him. And keep in mind, George Zimmerman, before he took out after Trayvon, called the cops first. And the sad fact is, if the police had come and confronted Trayvon Martin, there's no guarantee it wouldn't have ended up exactly the same way.
Right.
So this kind of has been going on a really long time, and we're just maybe now, for some of us, some white folks in particular, coming to see it.
Well, we've talked before, and that's because when Obama became president, I started, I'm very lucky. The African-American community, or just, people in general, trust me with their personal stories, and they've been sharing their stories with me for years and years. And so when Obama became president, a lot of black women were calling me, and they were terrified. They understood that there was going to be white lash. They got it. They got it instantly. While they were thrilled to see, a dream fulfilled, they were also terrified. And of course, they had reason to be, because this is when it seems like the Tea Party people just became prevalent. They were everywhere, and they were, showing signs of Barack Obama with a bone through his nose, and Donald Trump became a birther, and this crazy thing about affirmative action and how it was, discriminating against white people, for God's sake. And that seems to be the thing that's getting in their craw. That they're sending me videos of Jared Taylor now, the American Renaissance Nazi guy. And, they think that Jared Taylor makes so much sense.
Yeah. Well, Jared Taylor is one of the leading sort of intellectual lights within the white supremacist movement, and he's far more dangerous than the bozos that were out in the field in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia. Jared is much more dangerous than those guys, because he's a lot more careful about playing his hand, and he tries to speak in these very high-minded tones. I wish that the media would do as much of a job exposing people like that as they do sort of the overt Nazis who can't help themselves and, throw up Sieg Heil salutes and do things like that, because they're much easier, I think, to see coming. People like Jared, much more dangerous, because he wraps his racism in a patina of respectability.
He's the preppiest. He's literally the preppiest racist I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this guy.
He speaks in this affected, sort of old English kind of accent. This sort of. He's trying to do William Buckley. He's not doing it as well as Buckley did it.
That's exactly
sort of fake, English Connecticut accent or whatever. But it's that kind of thing. And so I do think we need to. You mentioned the backlash piece. Carol Anderson's book, White Rage, she's a professor at Emory University in Atlanta. I highly recommend the book. And she talks about how in every era of black progress in this country's history, there has been this concomitant reaction of white rage because, as the saying goes, and I don't know who originated it, so I apologize, but when you're used to privilege, equality, or even just pluralism feels like oppression, right? So if I'm used to 90% of the good stuff, if I'm used to, let's say, 90% of the government contracts, which is historically what white male companies have received, if you tell me that now I might only get 75% because of equity initiatives, that feels like oppression, right? If I've been, 85% of the tenured faculty, God forbid I might only be 77%. If I've had 15 times the wealth of black families, God forbid it slips to only 10 times as much or 12 times as much, right? There's this, again, it's fragility, as Robin DiAngelo calls it. It's this inability of the dominant group to adapt and to adjust. It's an incredibly unhealthy position, and it really points out the irony of privilege, right? The irony is privilege tastes really good until it seems threatened, and then you don't have the coping skills to deal with life the way that marginalized people do. Not to romanticize marginality, it's just that when people have been crapped on their whole lives, they learn to adapt, and people that haven't had to do that are incredibly weak, incredibly thin-skinned, incredibly fragile, so they have to either turn to opiates or they have to turn to a political opioid like Donald Trump to solve all their problems.
Yeah.
And that's why we're in the position that we're in right now.
It is so true. I mean, people like to, one of the big topics that they bring up to me, these crazy people, I mean, and they will send you 40, 50, 60 emails. They will call the show. I mean, there's one calling right now, calls every single day, all day. Okay. There's a whole bunch of them out there, and they're all coming from Reddit and 4chan, and, they'll put out these, no, call her, you know what I mean? Put.
Yeah, because these members of the mass have jobs.
I was just going to, they're what? Oh, because they don't have jobs. Oh, well, one guy says he won $600,000 playing video poker. That's another aspect of it is these gamers, okay? They're in these gaming places, and a lot of white supremacy is happening in these game rooms. It's just amazing where they're getting this stuff from. But when you bring up, now for them, the thing is affirmative action, okay? That's the new slight. And when you bring up to them that there has always been, especially in the Ivy League, affirmative action for white people. These are the legacies where, George Bush is a C student, but he can get into Yale because daddy went to Yale and daddy is a donor. That is a legacy. That is, affirmative action for white people.
Look, you take all the black and Latinx folks combined, so black and brown folks at the top colleges and universities in this country combined, they represent about 14% of all the students. So if white folks think that we're being bumped from Yale, that's the thing they always say, I would have gotten into Yale if I had just been black, overlooking the fact that if they had been black, they wouldn't have been black just on the day they applied to Yale. They would have been black from the first day of their life, which means they would have been 3 times as likely to grow up poor, twice as likely to grow up in a house where the parents were unemployed. They would have been twice as likely to die in infancy. So forget Yale, you didn't even go into first grade, right? Their life would have been entirely different. But they only want to talk about the so-called preference that takes place at the point of admission rather than the K-12 education system, at which point we as white folks are 1/10 as likely to have attended a concentrated poverty school, twice as likely to have had the most experienced teachers, 3 times as likely to have had AP and honors course access. They start the yardstick at a very late point in the race.
I agree with you, and I've tried really hard to show people, that, being black in America, especially if you come from a community where there's rental properties rather than home ownership, makes your schools so terrible. Because there's no tax base to pay these and teachers in general are treated like slime in this society, and so these kids that get the advantage of going to a private school or get the advantage of going, I mean. And there is no such thing as affirmative action in the way that they associate it. You don't.
Of course not.
I mean, if I hear one more time, Tim, and this is why I called you, if I hear one more time that people get extra points on their SATs for being black, I'm going to tear my hair out of my head.
All right. Facts don't matter to Nazis and racists and white supremacists. They don't know what they're talking about. They lie all the time about these programs. They have no idea what they're talking about, nor do they know how the programs work, if they work at all. I mean, the reality is there are only about 100 and maybe 25 colleges in the United States that even do any kind of significant, what we might call affirmative action, where they're actually having to really, make a deliberate effort, because most colleges, pretty much anybody who applies gets in. Most colleges and universities are not ultra selective. There's only about 125 that are. And like I said, even at those schools, black and brown folks combined are about 13 or 14% of the students. And so if you're white and you can't get in, it's not because a person of color took your slot. It is because, as you pointed out, probably a richer white person, better connected, took your spot. And the same thing is true with jobs. If black and brown folks are taking all the jobs, then I need Nazis to explain to me how it is that white people are still half as likely to be out of work. Where are these jobs? Are they in Second Life? Are they on Minecraft? Are they in video game world? They're not in the real labor market. And yet again, facts are sticky things, which Nazis hope and white supremacists hope the general public is too stupid to actually look up for themselves. And so it's our job to make clear that these folks not only are not a master race, they're not even very good with Google. And that's been around for a while.
I know. Why can't you do a Google search? I don't understand it. So just for the record, affirmative action doesn't really exist. What it is it's one factor of admission. It's constitutional, and it's just one factor of admission that can be considered. Quotas are illegal in this country. They don't exist. And this Abigail Fisher case at UT, would you like to tell people who actually got Abigail Fisher's spot at UT?
Well, the year that she applied, and this has been true every year that one of these white folks has sued, you come to find out that the same year that they didn't get in, the same year that these white victims ostensibly were rejected, there were two things that never get mentioned. Number one, the same year, there were more black and Latino folks who were also rejected the same year, who had higher scores than Abigail Fisher, who had higher scores than Jenny Graff, which was the case at the University of Michigan. So there were more black and brown folks who were next in line ahead of Abby Fisher. She wouldn't have been next in any event. And the same year, there were far more white students than her who did get in, who were accepted, even though they had lower scores and grades than Abby Fisher. Now, why didn't Abigail Fisher complain about these less qualified white people getting in ahead of her? Because there were several. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it was like maybe 60 or so. Same thing was true with Jenny Graff. There were several dozen white folks less qualified using her interpretation of qualifications, grades and test scores. More white folks who got in who were less qualified, and there were more black and brown folks who didn't get in who were more qualified than she was, and she didn't say anything. So these victims are not victims. And, of course, the irony is these are the same people that tell black and brown folks, stop being victims. Stop wallowing in victimhood. But these are the most perfect, precious little victims on the planet. Like I said, they call other people snowflakes because they are engaged in such intense psychological projection that they don't even understand how incredibly snowflake-like all of their complaints are.
And what's interesting about these cases is they all seem to come from one giant slime vat called the Project on Fair Representation, which is the group that was behind the Voting Rights Act, saying racism was over and we didn't need the Voting Rights Act anymore. And then, of course, we saw voter suppression go through the roof. And Pennsylvania was just told to redraw their maps. And the second they did, oh, lo and behold, Tim, we won. Yeah. I mean, listen, I got to tell you that, this country has a very polarized 30%, I will say. It looks to me like there will always be just around 33% of Americans who somehow feel that they are being disadvantaged as more and more black and brown people make it into the middle class. And, I just want to let you know, black and brown is a characteristic that comes from, the adaptation of where your ancestors came from. It isn't, it doesn't signify any other thing. There is no connection to black or brown or Jewish or Asian IQ. This is another one of their crazy ideas. Now they're literally advocating for Asians all of a sudden. Like, this is their new thing.
Yeah, it's all a scam. I mean, it's Ed Bloom, who was one of the people that was behind Abby Fisher and has been behind all of these efforts. And what they're doing is trying to make Asians the new so-called victims of affirmative action, so that we don't actually notice that it's really on behalf of white supremacy that they're making these arguments. The research has been done on this, and it's found that if you were to get rid of affirmative action programs at places like Harvard, who's being sued right now, but it looks like they're going to have this lawsuit go through to try to challenge Harvard's programs because it's supposedly, according to the far right, hurting Asian Americans. If you got rid of affirmative action entirely at Harvard, it would increase the representation of Asian American students by about 1.5% is all, because there's just not a lot of wiggle room to add a whole lot of people, because there just aren't that many black and brown folks who are getting any kind of quote unquote bump from what we might call affirmative action. The people who would benefit most would be white people, but they don't want to say that because then it exposes their actual motivations, which are not about helping Asian folks. These are the same people that want to tell Asian folks to, stop speaking with an accent or go back to their country or whatever. They don't care about that. But
well, it's interesting because I looked at the Harvard situation. I actually looked at it, and Asian Americans are overrepresented as a percentage of the population at Harvard, and so this is one of the things they say. Well, that's because Asians are smarter.
Yeah, but they don't really. But then when you ask, I debated Jared Taylor many years ago and asked him that question because he kept saying, I'm not a white supremacist because I think Asians have higher IQ.
Right. That's because Jared was raised in Japan. He didn't come to the United States till he was 16 years old.
Right. Oh, I know. But when he says that, if in fact you think that Asian folks are so much more intelligent, then you should be advocating massive immigration of Asian people to the United States to improve the quality of our country. Why don't you do that? Oh, because you're a white supremacist. That's why. You don't actually want more Asians in your college. He doesn't want more Asians in his neighborhood, no matter how smart they are. He's on the record as saying he wishes all his neighbors were white and rich. He said that in the debate that he had with me. So he doesn't want Asian folks around regardless of their IQ. He is, however, like all white supremacists, willing to play the game and act as if they're the best friends of Asian Americans, so as not to expose their actual white supremacist, white nationalist, white separatist agenda. But it's all a ruse. It's all a game.
It is a game, and it's an interesting game. I just needed somebody to help me get the facts out there about, the fact that there is no affirmative action, okay? It is just, diversity is a quality in our schools that we value. So you can get like a percentage point for adding diversity just if you've had an interesting experience in your life.
Well, and it's, look, there is affirmative action, but let's understand what it is.
Yeah.
What we're saying is that if people who have started out 3 laps behind in a 5-lap race have narrowed the gap and performed in spite of the obstacles that they have faced, that we ought to give them an opportunity to prove themselves because they've already proved themselves in a competition that was rigged. I mean, if I start out 3 laps behind and at the end of the high school race, so to speak, I'm only a lap behind. Maybe I didn't get the exact same SAT score as you, but if I started out with more barriers and I overcame them, that's called merit. That's called qualifications. If I start out behind and I narrow the gap, I'm a faster runner, right, in terms of that metaphor. And the same is true academically. If I start out without your connections and I happen to have an impressive resume in spite of that, then maybe I'm actually more qualified for the job than the person who had the connections. It's not about replacing merit with race-based preferences. It's about realizing that in a racially unequal society, achieving against the odds is merit.
It's something to be applauded. It's like, wow, that was pretty amazing. I don't understand why people continue to say that if we did away with with affirmative action, of course you wouldn't see black admissions, and that's a plus. I don't get it. I don't even understand why that's a thing. And affirmative action, like I said, is not. There is no such thing as getting extra points on your SAT. That is not happening. No. 8 states completely ban any affirmative action at this point. Like you said, there are only 125 colleges that are elite colleges, and all they do is at the point of admission consider your whole life story so that they can have an interesting graduating class, and that's pretty much it.
And by the way, most of the admissions officers at those colleges also try to do the same thing. Now, they don't always succeed, and I wish they would do it better, but they try to also consider the same thing for working-class white folks. Interestingly, if you look at an Ivy League school like Harvard or Yale, and you look at a kid from California applying and a kid from Utah applying, and they have the same SAT score, right? So they're equally qualified according to the standards that conservatives love to talk about. The Utah applicant, who is overwhelmingly likely to be white just based on the demographic of that state, the applicant from Utah has a 45 times greater likelihood of getting into that Ivy League school than the equally qualified kid from California. Now, is that unfair? I would argue no. I would argue that's because, you know what, if I'm the Harvard admissions team, I'm like, hey, I want to have some people from Utah. I want to have some people from Wyoming. I want to have people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Technically, it's a preference. Technically, it means their odds are better. But the reason their odds are better is that there's a smaller pool of people from that place applying, and California has a lot of applicants because it's a really big-ass state, right? It's like, you know, if you live in Cambridge or you grew up in Boston and you're a good student, you're probably going to apply to Harvard. So you know what? The odds of people from Boston getting into Harvard are probably lower than the odds of somebody from Montana who is white as snow. But that's not unfair. It's just like understanding basic statistical probability, which, again, Nazis cannot do math. This is the problem. They cannot do math. They are not a master race. They clearly, they don't have the higher IQ. There's no question about that because they can't do basic statistical.
I love you. I do. The love is just endless for you. Thank you for saying yes to me today. I really needed to talk to you. And like I said, Tim Wise has a podcast. It's called Speak Out with Tim Wise. It's on Patreon. So go to patreon.com/Speak Out with Tim Wise. The new book is White Lives Matter, Race, Crime, and the Politics of Fear. I suggest you get 10 copies and give it to all your Nazi friends. Thank you, Tim.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you. Okay, that's what facts sound like. That's what the real world feels like. I hope I didn't, upset your little snowflake day too much. I hope I didn't put you off of your gaming. Freaks. Losers. You are so delicate. You really are. So I had to find a man to tell it to you because you just don't want to hear it from me. Some girl. All right. I'm so glad I got that out of my system. I feel so much better. Everyone knows it. The whole thing is broken. You got to get the money out of politics. It is the first issue, okay? The second, and that could come after people are starting to feel better. And the way that people will feel better is when wages go to $15 an hour universally. The way that people would feel better is if we did limit CEO salary to 250 times the median salary of the person that works on the line or in the mine or wherever they work. Okay, our whole system is broken. It's just broken. And once CEO, listen, these companies with this tax cut, they have so much extra cash. Remember, they were profitable like beyond belief before this tax cut. Now they got all this extra money. What do you think they're doing with it? They're buying themselves politicians.
Just what Apple did with it.
Okay, and
what Apple did with it.
Right, and the only answer we have for that is our vote. And so if people actually show up, because there are more of us than there are of them, always has been, there are more decent people in this country than there are indecent people. There are more sober people in this country than there are, people who are compromised, mentally. We need to save them too. And the only way to do that is to make ourselves visible, vote, and put ourselves back in power. It's the only way. When FDR did, the four freedoms, and it was the right to eat, that's when America was great. That's when America started to, in fits and starts. Of course, a lot of people were left out. And this time around, we've learned that bad lesson. So now everyone could be included in the four freedoms. It's so basic and it's so obvious.
From your lips to the God of elections' ears.
Yeah. No, just to the people. Just to the people. The people need to come. The people need to show up. That's it. It's a small thing to do, and it's one day on a Tuesday. I understand it's inconvenient for a lot of people because they are going from job to job. A lot of people can vote by mail now. There's all different ways. Everybody has got to vote. Everyone.
Once we straighten this thing out in the White House, we'll make that day a holiday. And there'll be no excuse.
We should.
Absolutely.
We should make it a holiday. We should make it a Remembrance Day so it can never happen again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
you, Randy.
Thanks, Frank.
All right.
Bye. Oh, Frank had a derecho. Jay in Port St. Lucie.
Oh, how you doing, Randy?
Hey,
My
Jay.
name is Jay. I live here in Port St. Lucie. But I was just listening to you, and you were talking about what's going on, and how they have affirmative action. But anyway, my father was a veteran of World War II.
Yeah.
And when he got out of the service, that's when they created the GI Bill for veterans coming out of World War II to the greatest generation and all that. But it only applied to white soldiers.
I know, and people don't know that.
They don't know that, and I'm living it. I had to live that when I was a kid because my father was. They created these developers had Levittown, Long Island, where they built all these tracks. Huh?
Yeah, Levittown was for whites only. Levittown.
Yeah, but at the time when my father got out, he tried. He put in an application for it because he said, hey, he was over in Germany fighting. He could have died for this country just like everybody else was over there fighting. And he applied and everything, and they denied him because of he wasn't white. He was an African American, even though he fought and did everything to save help save this country. And he was very angry about that. And then we had to move out. We moved out to Canarsie into the Brookline housing when they built it back in.
That's where I'm from.
I know. I've talked to you about 10 years ago about Canarsie.
Okay. Yeah.
And I grew up in that project. I spent about 3 or 4 years there. But the thing was, when my father, after that, he went to buy a house in Canarsie. He went to a real estate guy, and he showed him a house on East 94th and Avenue L, somewhere up around the Avenue L area.
That's my neighborhood. I'm from East 100th between Seaview and N. So.
Yeah. And so he looked at it and everything, and he was ready to purchase it. And then the people in the neighborhood got so mad, and they threatened the real estate guy. They threatened his life, and they got money together. All the people that lived in that block, they all got together and bought the house before my father could get it, just to stop him from moving in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I remember growing up like that, and I remember my mom's friends coming over. My mom would sit there, and they'd play mahjong, right? And all the ladies would come over, and they would say, the blacks are moving in. Never sell to blacks. Never sell to blacks. They're already going to our kids' schools, and they're so stupid and lazy. Look at them. They sleep all day at the desks. The teachers have to poke them and wake them up. And my mother, thank God, God bless my mother said, they're not stupid. They're tired. They're being bussed from across the borough. They're getting up at 4:30 in the morning, and our kids aren't going to their schools. They're being taken from their neighborhoods and being bussed into our schools, but they have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. By the time school starts at 8 o'clock, they're exhausted. And they labeled my mother a communist, and they told my father that my mother needed to shut up about it, and they just disowned her and called her every name in the book. I mean, I remember I grew up like that. I grew up exactly like that. I grew up right there where we're talking about. That is my neighborhood. That is exactly what happened.
Well, that's where I spent time. As
but isn't it interesting how most Americans just don't realize that my dad fought in World War II and your dad fought in World War II, and even though they had the Serviceman's Readjustment Act, which is better known as the GI Bill in 1944, blacks didn't get the low interest home loans that the white GIs did, and developments that started popping up had whites only policies. Levittown, you could only buy a house if you were white. That's number one. Right. And there was another one built by in Manhattan. There's a big, they're hideous buildings, but they were built by MetLife. Okay, they're called the Stuyvesant, buildings.
Oh yeah, Stuyvesant. That's down like about 23rd Street around that
That's
area.
Right. And all those buildings, those were only rented to whites. And then you had Donald Trump come in as the developer and his father, and they would only rent. See, they didn't have for sale; they only had for rent. But they would only rent to whites, and that's when the testers. The civil rights movement started around then. And that's when the testers would go in, and the testers would find that white people were shown apartments, black were, and they lied about it their whole lives. They lied about it to the court. The court found them guilty, and they still kept doing it.
Oh yeah. See, that's what gets my nerve when I hear people complaining and saying, "Well, why is affirmative action and this and everything you were talking about?" But see, white privilege, they already had it. They had the privilege. They didn't have to go through not even a quarter of what we had to go through just to survive or to get into the middle class. So it was like given to them, and we had to struggle, to make it, and still ran into a lot of impediments, a lot of racism and everything. Even when I worked for the city of New York with the sanitation department, when I started, I had to battle different things that happened for assignments. And when I became a supervisor, then I said, once I become a supervisor, I'm going to treat everybody fair. I'm not going to pick on nobody because of their race, if they're Italian, Irish, whatever. Everybody's going to get treated equally. And that was my motto. And that's what I did. And I had a pretty good career in the Department of Sanitation. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you that story. I just thought about it as you were talking with Mr. Wise and everything.
Well, thanks
you.
A lot. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Jay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Rhonda in Erie. Oh, Rhonda, hi. I want you to know I booked Tim Wise because of you.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Tim Wise is really, I know that people have criticized him for some of his stuff. He is the best anti-racist activist and educator out there right now.
I agree.
He is a really good, I know a lot of the people who are listening in your audience today probably know a lot about what he was talking about, or, they're susceptible, they're ready to hear it, they're receptive to hear it. But that's not preaching to the choir. Tim Wise is a tool for people who have racist people in their families. Because if you go to his YouTube page and you watch some of his lectures, some of them are longer, an hour or so, but some of them are pretty short.
Yeah.
You can go there and get ammunition.
Yeah.
Because he knows how to talk to racists. And so if you need help, he's the person to go to.
Yeah, well, you got to remember his background is very, it's very informative. I mean, he respects Black authority because Black authority raised him, and so he has an inordinate amount of respect for those who raised him. And then he went to what he calls a plantation school in a Black neighborhood. Right, he went to Tulane, and so he has this wonderful, very. Full experience, just, being caught between the races. And he knows that good is good and bad is bad, and it's, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I thank you for bringing him on. He's really good.
I did
the other thing.
I promise you I did it for you. I did it for you because the two of us were so completely dejected the other day, you and me. And when you said we were withdrawing, I was too. I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people heard it in my voice, but I had just... I had gotten to this point where I was just burning out, fighting these racists all over my Facebook page, and then emails, and they're on the YouTube page, and I just said, and I heard you, and I said, no, we can't go there. We can't go there.
Well, we can't, but I know we're always gonna have those moments.
I was gonna say, I guess we can go there. We just can't stay there.
We can't stay there, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because when I heard you playing the racist dude, and the woman was talking to him about, do you label yourself a white supremacist?
Yeah.
And he said, well, first of all, I think we need to get rid of that word in our vocabulary. And I was in the car screaming, you idiot, you don't even know that white supremacy is two words. And you don't even know the definition of each of the words. Of course you're a white supremacist.
Yeah.
So, the people who are that kind of virulent racist are two things. They're dumb. They're three things. They're dumb, or maybe not three, maybe just two. They're uneducated at the very least. But the other thing they are is terrified.
They're
terrified.
I know. They're very frightened. They are. They're frightened of everything. They don't.
They are.
Yeah. They don't understand, that the thing that they should be frightened of is bought off, paid off policy. They don't understand that the literal taking apart of America does not come from the bottom. It comes from the top. I always say that. I do. I go, I tell people all the time how easy it is to look down. Makes you feel stronger, makes you feel bigger, makes you feel more important. But that is not where your problem is. Your problem is not coming from below. Your problem is coming from on high. They are literally stealing from you, peeing on you, and telling you, that they got you. I mean, they're lying to your freaking face.
But they're so desperate.
They are.
That they hang on to it. They hang on to it
because I think they're afraid that if they ever woke up from this nightmare that is their lives, they would have to do something.
Well, they'd have to live their lives in the ways, or they'd have to think about their lives in the same ways that those of us who are members of oppressed groups have had to do.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do that.
Well, they're too lazy.
They don't want to do that.
They're just too lazy, and they're too entrenched in their own muck. And to tell you the truth, it's muck. Okay, this lifestyle that is becoming so prevalent all over this country of opioid abuse and alcoholism and abject, hopelessness. This is coming from the top. This is not, nobody's, from below them is doing this to them.
It absolutely is. And that's why Reverend Barber's campaign to restart the Poor People's Movement is right on time.
By the way, Reverend Barber has started the campaign for the poor. It's going on for 40 days. I think I put a link to it in my homework today, randyrhodes.com, so you can just go to the homework section and you'll see under the hope section. I created a whole hope section.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
And it's in there, and you can join. They'll give you your own local Facebook page to tell you where your events are and what to do and how to do it and how to contribute and be part of something really, really bigger than yourself. It's awesome. It's awesome.
That's fantastic. Well, listen, you keep doing what you do. You don't give up. I won't give up.
Deal.
All right.
Done. I love you. I do. She's so important to me, and I don't know her, okay? She's just been in my life in a meaningful way for probably 15 years or more. But when she gets down like that, I get down like that. And I know we can go there, but we cannot stay there. So thank you, Rhonda. You do it for me, honey. You do. You're just the smartest person. I love you. RandyRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.